Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Anbernic RG556. Now, this is one that I've been waiting on for a while, and on paper, it's definitely looking like one of their most powerful handhelds to date, because this new device is powered by the Unisoc T820 SoC. It's a 6nm 8-core chip, and we've got a maximum clock up to 2.7 GHz, along with a quad-core Mali G57 GPU at up to 850 MHz. Along with this more powerful chip, we've also got an AMOLED display at 1080p running at 60 Hz, and it does look absolutely beautiful. Actually, huge fan of what they've done here. Now, I know the overall design may be a little off-putting to some people. I've seen online that people didn't like that we had these handles on it, but I'll tell you what, this thing is super comfortable to hang on to for long periods of time. It's very ergonomic, and that's really why they've added those handles there, right there in the palm. Fits perfectly in your hand. They are offering two different color variants of this handheld. Obviously, we've got the solid black here, but over on their website, you can opt to get their crystal clear blue version, which also looks really good. Definitely a bit different from other handhelds they've released on the market. Now with this, we do get Hall-based analog sticks. They're switch size, so if you're not into those, you definitely won't like these, but they do work out really well. We've also got linear triggers around back, and as you can see, we do have some lighting around those analog sticks. Again, this is way more comfortable than I ever thought it would be. So, reaching all of the buttons, not a problem to play this for a long period of time. And with this, we do get a 5500 milliamp hour battery. I've been averaging around 4.5 hours of gameplay out of this with higher end emulators like Gamecube and PS2. But keep in mind, if you're playing lower end games or emulating older systems, you could definitely get much more battery life out of this thing. Now, when it comes to the built in controls, again, we do have Hall based analog sticks. Dpad over here actually feels pretty nice, and we're going to test that out in a little bit. It's new for Anbernic, so we definitely need to see how it performs. We've also got a dedicated home button, since this is an Android-based handheld, and we've got a launcher button, which will bring us into our retro launcher. Moving over to the right-hand side, obvious layout, ABXY, switch style, or Japanese style. Other analog stick, start and select. Down here on the bottom of the unit, we do have dual stereo speakers, a 3.5mm audio jack, our micro SD card slot, and USB Type-C for charging the battery up, syncing it to your PC, or even 1080p video out. So this does support connecting to a larger display over USB Type-C. And finally, up top, we've got our shoulder buttons, and these triggers are actually Hall-based, so we've got those Hall-based linear triggers on this also. The SoC is actively cooled, so we do have some ventilation up top, a power LED indicator, volume rocker, and our power button. So far, I've actually been having a really good time with the RG556, and with this, it is powered by that Unisoc T820. This is one that we haven't tested on the channel yet. It's a 6nm octa-core ARM SoC. We've got one A76 core up to 2.7 GHz, 3 A76 cores up to 2.3, and 4 A55 cores up to 2.1. This is paired up with a quad-core Mali G57 GPU running at up to 850 MHz, 8 GB of LPDDR4X RAM, 128 GB of UFS 2.2 internal storage, plus we've got a micro SD card slot for easily expanding that storage, a 5.48-inch AMOLED display at 1080p running at 60 Hz, 402 pixels per inch, and it's 102 sRGB, so it's just a bit oversaturated. Personally, really like this screen they chose. Built-in 5 GHz Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5.0, dual stereo speakers, 5500 mAh battery, and out of the box, this is running Android 13, and we do have OTA updates. So first and foremost, it's an Android device. We've got access to Google Play right out of the box. You can play all of your favorite games there from Google Play, or you could sideload them if you want to. But one thing I really do like about these handhelds is the built-in retro launcher. We've got a dedicated button that'll bring us right into it, and as you can see, very simple design, minimalistic, but I kind of dig the way they've got this set up. Basically, I've got all of my ROMs on a micro SD card in the correct folders. Put the card back in, just ran a quick scan, we've got them listed right here. A lot of the lower end stuff is going to be using RetroArch cores to play our games, but for the higher end emulators like Gamecube, PSP, we've got those standalone emulators that'll automatically choose for us. I do wish there was a little more customization with this launcher, but it's really simple to use if you're just getting into it and you don't want to have to hassle with anything else from Google Play. You've always got this that you can access quite easily. You can also enable the launcher so it'll boot directly into it if you want to use it that way. But personally, I like the Android interface. We've also got a few extras here. like an on-screen key mapper. Now this is going to come in really handy for games that don't support native controllers on Android, like Gensin Impact. There are some profiles here that we can load up, like a Gensin Impact profile to allow us to use the built-in controls as touch points on screen. We've also got a high performance mode, which is basically just going to take our governor or our CPU governor up to performance, and full fan control. You can totally disable the fan. We've got kind of a mid-range level here where you really can't hear the fan, but as soon as you turn it to strong, that thing does start putting out a little bit of noise. It's something you can definitely hear while you're not playing a game, but it will keep this thing nice and cool, and you don't have to worry about it thermal throttling. Personally, I just leave it on auto. And finally here, we've got an OTA update section, so if they ever need to update any of the software, we can always download it directly from here on the device. So far, operating system has been super smooth here with that T820 SoC. Haven't run into any issues. We've got 8 gigs of RAM, which is more than enough. And the first thing I wanted to test here were a couple Android games, because after all, we are using an Android device. Here's Minecraft Pocket Edition. Basically, this will run on anything. Now with this, I didn't have to turn any of the chunks down or anything like that. I mean, we're seeing some good performance. Built-in controls worked right out of the box. Didn't have to do any mapping or anything like that. But of course, there are harder to run games, and there's games on the market that just don't support native controllers on Android, like Gensin Impact. Okay, so as you can see, built-in controls aren't going to work. You'd have to use the touch screen if you didn't have an on-screen key mapper. So what we can do here is enable the on-screen mapper. We can totally customize all of these on-screen buttons, or you can load a custom profile, like the Gensin Impact profile, which should put everything in a correct place for you. Once this is enabled, we've got the built-in controller working with Gensin Impact. And right now, we are at medium settings, 30 FPS. That's kind of the sweet spot. You could run this at very low 60 if you wanted to, but with those medium settings, we still have a little bit of fidelity here. And it actually works out quite well on this device. I was pretty surprised at how good it's running right now at medium settings. Now, of course, going up to 60 FPS, totally maxed out would be nice, but you really need a powerful chip for that. Now I want to move over to some emulation, and the first thing we have here is just really for some Dpad testing. I knew this device would handle Dreamcast using Redream really well. I just upscaled to 1280 by 960. Dpad is a little firmer than I'd like it to be, but you can definitely pull these special moves off. I was kind of expecting them to use their regular old Dpad, which is one of my favorites for these ARM-based devices, but it looks like they kind of strayed away from that with this handheld. And I mean, it's not a horrible Dpad at all. Actually, yeah, works out pretty good, but I wish it had a little better roll to it like their original D-pads on their other devices. And by the way, as long as the game's supported by the emulator, it's going to run your favorite Dreamcast games at full speed, even upscaled, whether you want to use Flycast or Redream. Next up, a little bit of N64. We've got more than enough power here. Even something like 007 GoldenEye is going to work out well. I'm using the Mupin 64 plus FZ emulator from Google Play, one of my favorites. I am upscaled just a bit with this emulator, and it's running this game just fine. I tested a few more N64 games, didn't run into any issues here, and with that T820, I knew it would definitely be possible. PSP works flawlessly on this device. Right now, I'm using the standalone version of PPSSPP, 4X resolution with everything that I've tested except for 2 games so far ran at full speed with that Vulkan backend. When it comes to the 2 games I'm talking about, it's really the God of War series. I had to drop it down to 3x to alleviate any kind of drop frames here. When it comes down to it, this device is awesome for PSP. I mean, it definitely feels great in the hand. We've got a beautiful 1080p display. We can upscale these games. It just works out great for these, and I really do like the performance the T820 is putting out so far. But we've still got some higher-end emulators that we need to test, so that's going to bring us to our next one. Gamecube and Wii using the Dolphin emulator. So I've gone through and I've tested about 6 different games so far for Gamecube, about 4 different games for Wii. A lot of the easier to emulate stuff is going to work just fine on the T820, but when you move up to the harder to emulate games like F-Zero GX, even at 1x resolution, it will kind of fall on its face. Games like Wind Waker, Resident Evil 4, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and even Super Mario Sunshine all ran at full speed. But even Automodalista at 1x, which I do consider kind of a harder game to emulate on these chips, wasn't at full speed, so definitely keep that in mind. But one that actually kind of surprised me was Tatsunoko vs. Capcom for Wii, still using the Dolphin emulator. And by the way, this is not a modded version of the Dolphin emulator. I'm sure with something you could get a little better performance out of this harder to emulate games, bringing the resolution under 1x. But I'm using the standalone official Dolphin build right now, and it's really not that bad. Much better performance than I thought we'd get. And finally, we've got some PS2 using Ether SX2. Now, when it comes down to the back end, either Vulkan or OpenGL, it's really going to be game dependent. But right now with Gran Turismo 3, we're at 2x resolution, and this looks amazing on this display. I mean, we're getting awesome performance, full speed. And games like Crash Bandicoot or even Kingdom Hearts 2 can be upscaled to 3x on this device. But when I moved over to God of War 2, at 2x it kind of fell on its face. I had to drop it down to 1x res, and even then, we're not quite, at full speed. 0.75 with this, or 1x, maybe even 2x with some cycle skips would definitely get you by with this game. And the final thing I wanted to show off here was Steam Link. You could also do Moonlight if you want to. Personally, I'm just a big fan of Steam Link. We've got Wi-Fi 5 here, so performance is really decent as long as you've got a good router. Basically, what we're doing is streaming from my main gaming PC. So this is connected to the same exact network in the house, and as you can see, we've got that Gamepad UI or the Steam Deck UI going on. You can access everything from your Steam library directly on this device here with Steam Link. We're going to get into some Spider-Man Miles Morales. And so far, I've actually had a really great time streaming from my gaming PC to this device here. That Wi-Fi 5 is great for getting a stable connection. I'm at a balanced profile, but I could probably take it up to high quality. I'm streaming at 1080p from my gaming PC, and yeah, I mean, these games are fully playable on this device. I think it looks amazing with this AMOLED display. I did have to remap the built-in controller in Steam Link itself, but it worked out just fine as soon as I got everything set up. So first impressions here, not a bad little device. It's definitely one of the more powerful devices from Anbernic so far. And the RG556 is definitely a super comfortable handheld. Now there are a few little things that I'd like to change here. The D-pad itself does feel a little slippery, just the material that it's made out of. And the black plastic we have here isn't the highest quality, at least it doesn't feel like it or look like it. And it's a fingerprint magnet. So if that's something that really concerns you or bugs you, then I would probably go with the crystal blue version that they have over on their website. But so far, I'm pretty impressed with the performance here. Now, I will have at least one more video coming up. There are a lot of other emulators that I'd like to do some testing on in the next few days. So if you're interested in seeing a video like that, it'd be really cool if you could hit that like button or think about subscribing so you know when I post the next one. But if you're interested in learning a little more about the RG556, I'll leave some links down below. And let me know in the comments below what you think about the overall design. I have seen some people not liking it with those handles on the side, but it really does make a difference in comfortability with these added. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look video. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments. And like always, thanks for watching.